Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you as we are waiting in this 4th of July week to see where this big, beautiful bill is going to go. Actually, now that they've had a 15 and a half hour reading of the bill in the U.S. Senate, there's been some analysis, but you need to go to alternative sources so that you can get the real analysis of this bill. We're going to see draconian cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, SNAP, WIC, college loan programs, rural colleges, rural hospitals. It is going to be devastating. Devastating. Hey, Bernadette, and we need to talk about that. Got one of the most brilliant minds that exists in the world today, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, President Emeritus of Bennett College for Women, the co-president of the Push for Excellence program, brilliant economist, MIT minted, and one of Reverend Jackson's closest advisors for more than 40 years. And I'm going to leave it at 40 plus years just for the sake of you being my sister and my friend. But it's been a long time. We've got to talk about this. I want you to meet me, the Santita Jackson Show, on, that's right, on X, and on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube. That's where Bernadette and Robert are, and Andre. Please meet me on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube and like and subscribe. Meet me on Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky.social, santitajackson.bsky.social, and I'm on X at SantitaJ. You can also find me on the Santita Jackson Show there, but you can also find me still on Facebook. Everybody, please go to Santita Jackson and Friends, not Santita Jackson. I cannot accept any friends there. I can't. So do me that favor. Go to Santita Jackson and Friends. It's named that way for a reason. So let's get to this. When we're looking at these massive cuts, and they are massive, indeed, we're seeing North Carolina Senator Tillis, who said, I'm going to vote against this bill, and I'm also leaving the U.S. Senate. I know that many people who support President Trump will not support me, so I'm just going to go on and get out of here. What do you make of that? What do you make of that? And what about these cuts? How will education be impacted? It's going to be devastating, everybody. And how can America move forward with an undereducated or an uneducated populace? Think about that, everybody. Think about that. Countries grow when you educate the people. After the Cuban Revolution, one of the first things that Fidel Castro did was dive headlong into the creation of the education system. And it's kind of interesting because I think of Cuba a lot because my grandmother was a migrant worker, and she worked in Cuba picking beans and chopping sugarcane as a child. Yes, she's from the United States, but at that time in Florida, the borders were porous. And if you were poor, you went to work wherever you could. And so my grandmother, who ended up, she was orphaned at 11 or 12. She had her first child at 14. But after she got stable at 18 and married, she got all of her kids through college, and then she went and got a degree herself at 61 and got a master's at 65. Tremendous woman, tremendous woman. That having been said, she even remarked, and my grandmother was no raging radical, I would say. She talked about her admiration for Fidel Castro. She said, first, we were little more than slaves when I was working there. He changed that. And you could go to school. They went from being the least literate nation in the hemisphere to being the most literate. So what's going on with us? What are we trying to do? I saw this headline in the New Republic, and I just gave it to you, Dr. Malveaux. The Republican plot to uneducate America. To uneducate America. You and I have talked about this. When educated people are governed, uneducated people, and I'm very careful in my words because people are not ignorant. Some people don't have access to the education. We have valedictorians who are graduating who are functionally illiterate. That is not their fault. They demonstrated the will. Something happened. Uneducated people are ruled. Okay? Think about that. When you had monarchies where they ruled over people, did they have public school systems that sent everybody to school? No, Dr. Malvo. No, they didn't. You just went to work for them on their land and you did their bidding. So is there a Republican plot? Or not just a
Exactly.
Republican plot, it is a an oligarchical plot. Because you've got oligarchs on both sides of the aisle. And you
Yes,
see how
it's not a Republican plot.
that's right, to uneducate. And that's something I know that's near and dear to your heart because even, and I would say especially with your credentials, one of the things that I love about you, that my whole family, we all love about you, and so many of us, because you're part of all of our lives, all of our lives. You've taken the most stellar of credentials, and you have been ministerial in your zeal to save Bennett College, which you did do, and to how are we going to educate our our kindergartners, our preschoolers. I mean, that's what you've been looking at with Push Excel. I mean, hey, these are the trends in education. We've got to figure out what we can do for our children. We've got to get them into school. We've got to get them educated. But now we're seeing these cuts, these education cuts, Dr. Malvo, that are contained in this bill are going to be devastating. You're not going to be able to afford to. College is unaffordable now. You're not going to be able to get a grant, and you'll have no options to repay anything.
And then,
What's happening? What do you see in this bill?
well, Santita, well, let's begin with the Pell Grant, which initially was designed to take care of the cost of attendance. As the cost of attendance has risen, the percentage that the Pell covers has lowered. But initially, it was planned that the Pell would cover, basically at least tuition, probably tuition and books, in some cases tuition, room and board if you were at a state university. Now, currently, the Pell is $7,395. The Big Ugly, that's what I call the bill. The Big Ugly would cut it by 23% to $5,700. So you're cutting it by 23%. At Bennett, where the cost of attendance is about $25,000, that means this covers only 20%.
How much is Bennett?
Of the total cost of attendance. People have to find the rest of it somewhere else.
Well, I know how much is it.
It is a relatively lower cost school. If you go across the street to your daddy's alma mater, North Carolina A&T State University, you're talking more like $35,000, and that means that $5,700 is covering less than a sixth of the cost of attendance. And we can go down. If you're going to Harvard, which many of our Pell students, of course.
No. I'm just asking you, how are you supposed to cover everything else? Dr. Malvo?
Yeah. So, you're going to Harvard, you're talking about 10% of the cost of attendance, tuition. So basically, it's making it more difficult for students to enroll. The second part of this, which is very important, is that they've changed the enrollment requirements. So because many of our students, not just Black students, many of our students come to college needing a lighter load in their first year. So many students take 12 units as opposed to 15 units. Now they're saying if you don't take 15 credits per semester, you will not get a full Pell. So Pell used to be $7,395. Now it's $5,700. And you won't get the whole $5,700 unless you have 15 units. Again, many first generation students don't need to take 15 units because they're not going to pass them. We need to give them 12 units so they can get into the college groove. So that's the second thing that's going to happen. Then they are coming after students who are in community colleges. They're coming after others. They have this thing called a workforce Pell, which means that if you're working, you can get some Pell money. But now the challenge with that, first of all, I don't I don't have a problem with folks who are in community college half-time getting money, but they're saying it has to be full-time. But secondly, what this actually means is if people get workforce Pell, that money is going to come out of traditional Pell. So this has always been a Trumpian um, ploy. We want to help the working class, not the upper class. So we want to help folks who are scrappy and they're community college students. But that money, if they qualify for it, because they're making it difficult to qualify for, will come out of traditional Pell money. So they're cutting opportunities for young people to enroll in 4-year colleges and even in 2-year colleges if they don't take those 15 units. And what we also have to remember is many students who go to community college go so they can transfer to a 4-year college. But the 15 units may be incompatible with their community college schedules, given any number of things that happen. This is an attack, Santita. It's nothing more than an attack. And here's the other thing that's happening right now. Right this minute as we speak, 1,400 Department of Education employees in Washington, D.C. are being paid to do nothing. 1,400 of them, and they come from two offices. They come from the Office of Financial Aid and they come from the Office of Civil Rights. And those two offices have been cut because of lawsuits. These folks can't go back to work, but they're getting paid. What could they be doing instead of sitting at home? They could be processing financial aid applications. So I'm very worried about some of our students, especially HBCU students, because my experience is that too many of our folks don't fill the paperwork out on time. And then the financial aid office is scrambling to try to hook them up before school starts. And then many of our HBCU schools start as early as the second week of August. But all the people will be helping them, will be on the helpline and all that, they're home. They're getting paid. They're not worse off. And then the other thing, of course, is that many of them are leaving. They're like, I don't want to live like this. I don't know if I'm coming back or not. So they're leaving. So some of the most senior and most experienced people are leaving. So when we look at Pell, we look at any of these things. I mean, what this person has done is really hurt our students. Low income students nationwide are going to be hit because of reductions in Pell. Community college students and part time students will also be hit hard because of changes in the regulations. Um, I don't know what to say to you except for the fact that this is horrible. The cuts are 25%, roughly 25%. And part-time students will lose eligibility altogether. Meanwhile, this is an administration that says they value work. They want people to work. Well, part-time students are students who are in school and working. Why punish them? Why not reward them? But with the cuts, everybody is going to be punished.
We're talking with Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist, president emeritus of Bennett College for Women. And of course, you're the former dean, University of California at Davis. Dr. Malveaux. And so she's got a
Pardon
tremendous.
me?
You've had. I was just letting people know that you've had a lot of. You've been at an HBCU, but you've been at a predominantly white institution. So you've seen, and you've seen these students, because all students who go to HBCUs are not poor or working class. There are some who are well-to-do, and when you go to these University of California, you see some
Yes.
well-to-do students, and you see some poor students, you see some middle-class students. But we do know um, that college is not an inexpensive proposition anymore. I mean, when my parent, even when my babysitters were in school, they could work in the summertime and get enough money to pay for school in the fall. This was like 40 years ago, right? 40, 50 years ago. Now that is no longer the case. How are they formulating their thoughts to cut to cut Pell Grants as college tuition prices and college costs are rising, Dr. Malvo? How do you do that? Everything costs more, especially college.
The Pell Grant should, Santita, the Pell Grant should have been rising with inflation. It should have been rising just as any a number of other things, including congressional salaries, rise pegged to inflation. But college costs have risen while the Pell has not. Again, the initial plan for the Pell was to have it cover the cost of attendance at a moderately priced college or university. It was never going to cover the cost at a Harvard or at Princeton. But it always was like if you're at a state university, the Pell Grant should cover you. If we go back and look historically, that's what was said. But the Pell Grant, because you have this anti intellectual bias in the White House and in the Congress, and I shouldn't call it the White House, it's a house that enslaved people built, but you have the anti intellectual bias that suggests that people don't need to go to college. I mean, I remember years ago debating some man, a member of Congress actually, and I probably don't remember his name because he was so odious. And he kept talking about, well, people don't have to go to college. They can get very good jobs. I said, sir, with all due respect, do your children go to college? He said, oh, of course. As if it would never have crossed his mind that his children shouldn't go. But our children shouldn't go. That's the issue. This is the differential distribution of intellectual access that we're seeing time and time again coming from our government. And now, with the big ugly being debated as we speak, it's not only going to be education that's cut, it's going to be health with cuts in Medicaid, it's going to be food with cuts in SNAP. We're talking about millions of people who will see their basic existence threatened by the big ugly.
When you say their very existence threatened, what do you mean by that?
If you can't eat, you can't live.
Hmm.
Millions of people will see their SNAP benefits cut. If you can't eat, you can't live. If you can't have health care, we lost last year 34,000 individuals. Now that might not seem like a lot in a country of over 300 million people, but 34,000 people died from lack of health care. Lack of health care. We have children, Santita,
Wait a minute.
who
That's like
have had
50,
dental
50
abscesses
states.
and did not have.
Yeah. No, I'm saying that's 50 states. That's 740 person a state. That's a lot of people, particularly if it's someone you know, Dr. Malvo. These deaths are not
Oh yeah,
inconsequential. They never
no.
are.
When you look at, no, these are people, we could put names on them. We could talk about who they are. We could talk about people who died because they didn't have access to dental health and they had an abscess in their tooth and then they died because they didn't have that access. We talk about people. I talked to a lady the other day. I pulled something in my knee and I told her, I said, well, if I don't get any better the next day or two, I'm going to urgent care. And she said, it's an older sister, a little older than me. She said, baby, I wouldn't do that if I were you. It's going to cost you. And I said, if my knee is still hurting by Tuesday, I'm going to urgent care. She said, well, do you have enough money? She said, I wouldn't go to urgent care. I would just write it out. Well, that's what a lot of people feel. But you can, you can die from some of these injuries. You think it's a minor injury and it isn't. So no, I will not go to urgent care because I feel better. But if I don't feel well enough to go to the gym tomorrow, guess where I will be? Urgent care. But again, there's so many people who don't have the luxury that we have to make the kind of choices that we can make. And that's really kind of frightening, but it's where we are. It's where we are. And even with this whole birthright citizenship, we're eroding the notion of a nation. What do I mean by that? The notion of a nation means we all live in the United States of America. We all have the same rights, the same privileges. Guess what? If you're in a state that has passed one of these draconian laws, the child is not entitled to citizenship. What's going to take time to work this through the courts. But so a child born in, let's say, Pennsylvania will have different rights than a child born in, say, Mississippi. So the whole notion of the equality of our nation is being eroded. I mean, but again, let me be clear. This is what they told us that they were going to do. Project 2025 laid all this out. And so this is not new information. The new
Wait a
information
minute.
is that there are a whole bunch of people who didn't think,
And Dr. Malvo,
well, a
2025
lot of
is
people didn't think it was
not
going to
new.
happen.
But my brother was telling me, he said, look, Project 2025 actually was implemented in 2022. And I'm just trying to find out, hold on,
Oh
everybody.
yes, they have
Because,
they've
so,
been planning this a long time.
so, I mean, but so what are we going to do? I
Well,
mean,
they've
Dr.
been
Malvo,
planning this, and the fact is that we didn't pay attention. We did not pay attention.
so now here we are. We have,
There are three things we're going to do.
okay.
So there's three things that we're going to do. Number one, the courts, although imperfect, the courts are pushing back in some cases, not in all cases. And of course, the man who lives in the house that enslaved people built also stacked this court. But did you see Katanya G. Brown Jackson's
Hmm.
brilliant response to the whole issue of birthright citizenship? And she said, they're eroding our rights. Soon we won't have any. But some of the lower courts are stepping up. Um, and even the Supreme Court has stayed their decision until the next session of the court. That's number one. We're going to look at the courts. Number two, we're going to look inward at ourselves. How are we resisting? What are we doing to resist? I'm troubled, as many of us are, by the fact that at the No Kings rallies, Black folks were conspicuously absent. Well, why
Why
was
do you think
that?
that?
We tired of this BS.
And wait a
I
minute.
think a lot of us are tired. I think
But Dr. Malvo, don't you also think, and I've said this to many of my dear white progressive friends. I mean, and they are dear friends, and they are friends in the struggle. We all go way back, Dr. Malvo. I said, when you talk about fascism and democracy to black people, black Americans, we go, okay, we have lived under fascism. We have lived without a democracy. We have lived in slavery in a land that's supposed to be free. What are you talking about? You're not speaking my language. I'm like, do you? So you all think that everybody's been free all the time? That fascism has
yeah,
not existed? Ask Dr. King. Ask any freedom fighter. They had to live under fascism in this country. So,
no, no, and that's a whole other point. Is you have all these all many of our white allies, and we love their allyship, but at the same time, where have they been for us? And I think that's what a lot of people are saying. Where have you been for us? And we haven't seen them consistently out for us. And so some folks are just saying, whatever. We've been living under fascism. We've been living under predatory capitalism. You want to protest now? How come you didn't protest earlier? I think even with the conflict around anti-Semitism, which of course we abhor completely,
absolutely.
any concept of anti-Semitism, but many of these universities have been anti-Black since they were established. I could go line after line and case after case. The University of I think it was Missouri, where a brother was admitted to the law school, but he had to sit outside the classroom.
Oh yeah.
He was a student. They had to sit outside the classroom because the white people were afraid that he might pollute them somehow. And when you start talking about anti-Semitism, I think a lot of people say, well, what about anti-Blackness? Why has there never been some hue and cry about that? Not conflating or comparing the two, simply saying, come on, y'all. Come on, y'all. And so I do think that there are a lot of Black folks who look at our allies and say, where were you for me? And a lot of times they weren't there. Many times they were, many times they weren't. That becomes an issue. I think also, like as I said earlier, Black women, we step up and step out all the time.
Yeah.
We step out for everybody. And I'm thinking about my Latino brothers and sisters, 42% of whom voted for the current president. And now they're coming to us saying, are you standing with us? And, the response could be, are you standing with us? How could you vote for somebody who told you in plain English that he was going to deport you, told you, and you didn't believe it? So again, I think that, I think that eventually, not even eventually, I think that by and large, as Black people, we always know what right is right, and we do what's right is right, and we stand at the gap even at the last minute. But I think right now people feel like they need a break.
But while we might need a break, this is not the time to take your foot off to put your foot on the brakes. I mean, because
No,
this is we are here. I mean, look, if Reverend were absolutely active, he'd be. I mean, and even now he is pushing us to move. And maybe because my father, my parents, our parents grew up in a Jim Crow America, they understand, Dr. Malvo, what we're
mm-hmm.
looking at. I mean, they really, 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 really get it. I'm not so sure. And wait a minute, and that's not just for Black people. That's for everybody.
Well, Santita, we will never see another leader. We will never see another leader like Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson, bringing the Rainbow Coalition together, getting more white votes, frankly, in some states than his competitors did, talking the talk that pulled us together no matter how we feel. Um, you know, just saying, there we will never see another leader like that. And he has trained up a cadre of young leaders. Some of them are in Congress, some of them your own brother, Jonathan, is among them. But there are many others. Cleo Fields is back in Congress. I remember
Mhm.
when Cleo
Thank God.
worked for Rev back in the day. And there's so many that he basically has lifted up. But very few have the comprehensive vision of a Reverend Jackson, the comprehensive vision. And so we are looking, but many of us have a slice of it. Many of us have. So we need to come together to deal with that slice of vision that we have to stitch together something that is resistant. One of the things that makes me smile, Santita, is the fact that what's his name, brother Zohan
Mom Donnie.
Mamdani in New York. Yes, he is the Democratic nominee for mayor in New York. All the money, all the everything lined up behind former Governor Cuomo, but he outspent Mamdani by probably a factor of 2 or 3 to 1. But it didn't matter. So we do know, as Reverend Jackson always said, that the same hands that pick peaches can pick presidents. We do know that we don't have to meet them dollar to dollar, that we can, that we have things that we can do to push back. But the issue right now is how we push back and how we allow an intergenerational, and I must say that, an intergenerational narrative about the next step. Mom Dami is 38, I believe, 36,
33.
something like that. He's under
He's
40.
33. He's 33. 33. He is
Ooh,
really
right
young.
on,
He's
right on.
33.
So we have to, the oligarchs want to keep the power, and some of our folks. I was very disappointed with our congressman, who I consider a friend and an amazing man, but still, our congressman Jim Clyburn went with Cuomo. The unions who would benefit from Mamdani's program went with Cuomo.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Cuomo is known to be very vindictive. And so many people went with him out of fear, just like some of these Republicans who know better are going with the man who lives in the house that enslaved people built, going with him out of fear. But that's not going to move our agenda, our people, our justice forward. So, but I got a good smile out of that Mamdani victory.
Oh yeah.
Mamdani, let me get it properly. His his victory, and we hope to see more of that. We need to see more of younger people, more progressive people. But the Democratic Party, in my mind, has become quite stale. They go with the okey doke. They go with the okey doke. They're afraid to challenge. And in that fear, it sets us back. Imagine if, we have two races coming up, Virginia governor with Abigail Spanberger, and there's a woman in New Jersey, I forget her name, who's running for governor. What if we could pull those two victories off? That is a slap in the face of the establishment.
Mm-hmm.
And that those are both Democratic women. My only challenge with them is that both of them are veterans, and they keep talking about the fact that veterans, I think, in a way to cull favor with the centrists. But hey, whatever we can do to essentially, and we have to stop. And I'm so chastising myself as I speak. We can't be single issue voters.
Yeah.
We have to look at the big picture. We can't say, "Oh, I don't like this person because they were in the military." Well, I actually like both of them. I think they're very good. I just hate the way that they just keep pounding in on the military. But if that's what it takes to win, go for it. There are some people with the choice issue who say, I won't vote for anybody who isn't pro choice. Well, if they're not pro choice, but they're pro fair wages, I might ask you to take a look at that. You know?
Don't you? Because
So
our politics
I
have
think
to be
that
more.
being single issue voters,
Well, I mean, just because don't you think our politics have to be?
hmm?
Don't you think that our politics have to be more nuanced? And let me acknowledge: is it Malenge Indawande? He
Absolutely.
is
That's
from South Africa. I want to
yes.
thank him for that. Thank him for tuning in and sending you so much love, my dear brother down there in South Africa. And please tell everybody about this show. And of course, about Dr.
And we
Juliana.
appreciate you, bro.
Absolutely. And you can catch her on the radio every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, on WPFW.
It's not
She's absolutely brilliant mind. So please, please, please tune into her. But, but help me to understand because Solomon, you said Trump is winning. And I mean, and but that's short-term pleasure, long-term pain. Let me getting back to Zoran Mamdani. I will say this: Reverend Jackson used to talk about a poor campaign, him having a poor campaign with a rich message. He did Saturday Night Live at the end of the '84 campaign, as you remember, and he opened in his opening monologue. He talked about getting 3.5 million votes and having raised about $3 million. He said that's little less than 99 cents per vote. He said this most cost-effective campaign in history, but it was a poor campaign with a rich
mhm,
message. And I see that that is what Zoran Mamdani has done, and that is what people can do. Look, he went from zero, really 1% name recognition. Brandon Johnson did the same thing. Did the same thing.
and
Just
yes,
kept pounding at the issues.
40 from 1% to 46%.
Yeah. Well, do you think that the electorate has changed? I mean,
It's very his victory is very exciting in the
how so to you? Because you've seen a lot of campaigns.
well the plus best I've been around. I first voted in 1972. So and haven't missed a vote since.
Mm.
And have seen a lot of campaigns. And what I'm thinking about the Democratic Party right now is they have created these people. I call them the consultant class. These consultants who are advising candidates, but basically they're getting really rich. They're not necessarily giving candidates advice in their own best interest. In one South Carolina race, and I won't call it out just out of propriety or some, um, a black woman was running for a Senate seat, and she was advised to avoid certain black precincts because they didn't want to see her as a racial candidate. But black
Mm.
folks were her base. I mean, white folks, she got, if she had better consultants, she might have won that Senate seat. And
Mm.
we see that time and time again. But the Democratic Party will often pay these consultants to give bad advice because that's the advice they've been giving. So, what we need to say to some of our candidates is Well, if you have to use her consultants, okay, but get your own, or
Absolutely.
talk to the people. Talk to the people. You've never been you if you're in public office as a black person, black people are part of your base. You can't ignore them now that you're running for higher office. You have to reach out to them. And the other people, the poor people, the working moms. And some of these words don't pass people's lips. How many times in the 2024 presidential did we hear even our beloved Democratic candidate use the words poor people? I
You
mean,
don't
use the
hear
words poor. That didn't happen very often.
you don't hear it. I mean, you don't hear it.
People are
I
running
mean,
away from poverty, but poverty is sitting in our face.
absolutely. I mean, and so that's what I'm saying. Wait a minute. Well, sometimes I just think that I've seen Democrats snatch what do they say? They snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. And see, to me, this isn't even about this, beyond the party. This is about the people. People, Dr. Malvo. I mean, people are hurting, and literally, people are not going to eat. They're not going to
Oh
have enough
yeah,
to eat. I mean, and you know what? That's going to create social instability,
and
Dr.
food banks. There was also, oh, it absolutely will. We'll see theft going up, robberies going up because people will eat if they can, but how they eat is an issue. Food banks, many of whom got money through SNAP, are going to get less. So these are people who are giving away boxes of food. They're going to get less. Now, a lot of civil society organizations will step up and give, um, but you can't rely on uh, civil society organizations. Our brother Solomon Harris asked, "What people aren't eating? Poor
Hmm.
people, Solomon. They have more month than they have money. Many of these people, they can eat. They may eat okay till the 22nd or 23rd of the month, and then they
There you
run
go.
out. You might say, well, yes, there are food banks and there's this and there's that, but not always. Not always. And yeah, just not always. And some now we're finding more and more food banks running out. Um, the Food Action Research Council has numbers about the number of people. We don't call them starving. We call them food insufficient, and it means we look at how much money they have, how much food they have, do they have enough? And I even today, I mean, I went out yesterday and a sister, I hate this when it happens, but you have to respond with her two children, wanted to know if I could help them. And of course I did. I walked them over to Popeyes, should have found something more healthy. But the little boy said he wanted fried chicken. We walked him over to Popeyes, got him some, some food, sat with him for a few minutes. I'm not, that wasn't a lovely thing. It was the best I could do at the time. I'm limping around. But the bottom line is private philanthropy is no substitute for a solid safety net.
Hmm.
Private philanthropy, it's good, it's great. It's not a substitute
It's not
for
public
making
policy.
sure that people
Yeah.
have enough food. This lady told me she worked as yeah, this lady told me she worked at a housekeeper at one of the hotels. So this is somebody who's working. Now I didn't check out, was she lying? I have no idea. But like I said, you will have people who are working 40 hours a week, 5, 6, 7 days a week, and don't have enough money to cover all their basic needs.
Hmm. And that happens
So,
all
Solomon,
over.
I hope I answered your question. And I would encourage you to do some research.
I do, and really, what the correctional officer for the lockdown sending your grandbaby in particular with some love, Dr. Julianne Malveaux commands respect. She can bring the Alpha Phi Alpha General Convention meeting to a complete halt and receive honors. I remember the late great Dorothy Height doing so. Amen to that. She's absolutely brilliant. But I don't understand how we doubt that people in America are starving. And as if a food bank can do enough. Now, you want people to use food banks or you implore them to, but then when you have a mayor like Brandon Johnson, And like, hopefully, the man who will become mayor of New York, when he talks about having a food bank that is not a food bank, a grocery store that is that comes through the city, that is powered by the city, people have a problem with that. Now all day long I'm hearing everyone talk about capitalism. I'm like, wait a minute. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, SNAP, WIC, this is socialist. We're a mixed system, Dr. Malvo. I mean, I don't know what the issue is. What, as if capitalism gives you your American bona fides. Our best friends are socialists. Yeah, the British, they're socialists until you get to the top. The aristocrats, they're capitalists and they're eating everybody else. And our bankers are so-called communists, but that's not quite what the Chinese are anymore. So people don't care about all of these labels and these systems, Dr. Melvo.
No one can put nobody can put communism in any kind of context. Nobody could put communism in any kind of context, or even socialism. I mean, what we have, is we don't, they're saying that, what's his name, the putative New York mayor, Mamdani, that he's a
Mm-hmm.
socialist. He's a democratic socialist, which as he describes himself, which means he believes in democratic principles, but he also believes, as Tim Walz did in Minnesota, that people should eat. I mean, he had full free school lunches in Minnesota, free school lunches, because so many young people were not eating. And that's how you do it. And that's not socialism, that's common sense. If you send young people to school and they don't have anything to eat, they're not going to learn. They're simply not going to learn. But the president, that man, said that he liked that he liked uneducated people.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, what is the long-term gain of non uneducated people? Uneducated people, as we said earlier, these are people, it's not their fault that they don't know, but they have not been taught. We keep cutting public education, we keep cutting higher education. And so these people are basically, and I don't want to disparage them at all, but they're listening to Fox News and them fools on and they're taking that in. I told you the story some months ago about being in LA and sitting outside Union Station waiting for a friend to pick me up and arguing, to my detriment. I would argue with a telephone pole with an older Black woman who basically said she couldn't vote for Kamala because she was a communist. And I said, honey, where did you hear that? And she gave me a long, somebody on Fox News had said it, and she believed. I said, but ma'am, she's been the attorney general of this state. I said, did you vote for her before? She said, yeah, but that's because I didn't know she was a communist. And then she told me, I didn't watch the news. I said, I watch the news 24/7. She said, what news do you watch? I said, oh, CNN, MSNBC. She said, see, and they're liars. But she drank the Kool-Aid. She totally drank the Kool-Aid, and she argued with me until I said, ma'am, let's respect each other, and we're not going to talk about this. Let's talk about the weather or those bags of stuff you got down there in the garment district. Let's not, because I wasn't going to convince her and she wasn't going to convince me. But you have a lot of people like that. A lot of people like that. And that's the benefit of that educating people. So most people, if they're educated, you tell them that Kamala's a communist and you look it up. You do a little research. You're like, oh, no, she isn't. There's nothing about her that's communistic. But
But
if you
have you
hear
seen
it
The
again
Crown?
and again and again, and
No, but see, we have to also understand where that comes from.
no,
I watched the series The Crown, which was fabulous. And what was interesting was this: every time Queen Elizabeth was confronted by people who wanted to end the monarchy and have a system that benefited everybody more equitably, her question was always, are they communist? And I think it's important for us to understand that context because Dr.
mm,
Malveaux, the communists, part of the reason people are so angry with the communists is because they overthrew the monarchs. That's what they did. And so, I mean, there's that part. I'm not a communist, but what I want a system, period, that benefits everybody. And I don't like all this greed in the system. You have not benefited from
Exactly. That's not
capitalism,
communism.
everybody. That mean that's not what that is. And I when I work, you know what? I'm not looking at equal outcomes, or should I say, the same outcomes. But I am looking at equality. I'm looking at creating a system where there's a floor beneath which no human being should fall. Do I believe in universal basic income? Absolutely. I think no one should. I
Yes.
think that food and housing, clothing and shelter should never be a problem for anyone. Now, whatever you get on top of that, okay, that's great. But I think that this is we've got to be very very
Well, yeah,
careful.
Dr. King said, well, yeah, Santita, Dr. King said, I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, peace and freedom for their spirits. I have the audacity to believe that people everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies. There are many in the United States. We have about 12% of the United States. Back to Brother Man who asked the question, about 12% of people in the United States do not have 3 meals a day for their bodies.
Absolutely.
They're food insufficient. This is the richest country in the world for now. If we keep it up, China will be eating our lunch. But
They're already doing that. They're the top trading
we
partner
can
in the
afford
world.
to feed people, but we've got this weird.
I'm just
Yeah, we've
I
got
know we're dealing with a
we've got
delay.
this weird. If you look at Project 2025, they've got
Mhm.
this whole thing. A Judeo we're a Judeo-Christian system, and people have to work to eat. That's in Project 2025. So if you're not working, you're not going to be eating. And both with the Medicaid and with the food stamps, they've increased the work requirement. So you have to work more in order to be able to get health care, in order to be able to eat. And that's fine if they're jobs. Where are the jobs? Who's going to administer to these jobs? I mean, so basically, this is a way of freezing people out of adequate health care and decent food.
Well, it's a way of what's going to end up happening is lifespans will be shortened, and which we're already beginning to see. And that ought to disturb
Yes.
everybody. While we are listening to people who are some of the most admired people in the world, they're talking about there being overpopulation, that there are too many people. My pastor, Reverend Clay Evans, used to say throughout my lifetime that I've never seen God make a mouth that God could not feed. There is more than enough space on this earth for everybody to have a patch of land. Did you know? I think it was one of these entities, the United Nations, or some entity had committed a study a couple of decades ago, and they found that there's enough land mass on Earth for every man, woman, and child, at least at this time, to have 3 acres. Reverend Otis Moss Jr. said, God will supply your every need, not your every greed. You have greedy people who are running all the way at the top, and they have the rest of us fighting each other. There are more of us than there are of them. You ought to want. COVID should have shown you, Dr. Malvo, that it is to your advantage for your neighbor to be well, which means they need to have not just health, they need to have health care, not health insurance, health care. The health insurance industry needs to be put out of business. We don't need them. We need a health care system, Dr. Malvo. We need an education system, Dr. Malvo. I mean, all these false constructs that are in the way, they're hurting us.
Oh, let's look at a Jeff Bezos who just did this multi-million-dollar wedding in Venice, purchased, closed down parts of Venice for his wedding. I mean, I'm not hating on him. Lovely, lovely wedding, I guess. But a multi-million-dollar wedding, which represents less than 1/10 of 1% of his wealth. So he's not going to miss it. Let's look at what's his name, Mr. Buzzsaw, Elon Musk, um,
Yes.
and all the money that he has. Again, I'm not begrudging them their wealth. I'm begrudging them their inability to pay their fair share of taxation so that others might
Hmm.
live. So that others might live. And Musk's thing was cut government, cut government, cut government. in the process of cutting government, we have created an international starvation epidemic globally. So that on the African continent, in parts of Asia, and in other places where people relied on USAID is almost defunct right now, doesn't exist. That was one of the agencies where people were able to get food. So we can go down the list and look at what's being done in the name of, quote, what does that man say? He says he wants to erase fraud, inefficiency, and abuse. I think those are his words: fraud, inefficiency, and abuse. Well, what was that parade that cost $40 million in Washington, D.C.? That called that fraud, inefficiency, and abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Even military people, staunch military people, said that thing was unnecessary at a time when we are looking at all kinds of lacks, all kinds of challenges. He wants to have a parade, so he got one. And we don't know what it has cost. The baseline budget was 45 million, but we don't know what it's cost us in DC in terms of our streets, in terms of the damage to our streets to have these many ton tanks rolling down Constitution Avenue. I mean, this is insanity. But again, what we've seen in the past, I'd say 50 years, but even 30, is a concentration of wealth going up. So you have more wealth concentrated in fewer hands. And what that means is, as you said, the rest of us are scrambling. More wealth concentrated in fewer hands. That's the state of these United States right now.
You know, uh, I will say this, we're going to close this out. Solomon, I hear you and I thank you. But, what did you say? Look at all the jobs Bezos created. When you talk to his employees, many of them are not getting the adequate compensation. They're not getting the coverage, the health care that they need, and things like that. People are working hard every day, and they're not adequately covered in their
All
in
the
their
jobs
health
that
care.
Bezos created.
Yeah, I mean, wait a minute. I remember my
Mm.
father saying in one of his speeches at the Democratic convention, when he talked about, when he was lamenting the fact that you have people who make up the beds in the hospital, but when they get sick, they cannot afford to stay in the hospital, the same bed that they make. No, I mean,
Yeah,
that
they
is,
can't come to the hospital.
they can't come there. I mean, as you said, why do you
I
deserve free
talked
food?
at
Wait a
Whole
minute.
Foods the other day.
I'll let you answer him. He says, why do you deserve free food?
Let
Wow,
me tell
really,
you,
Solomon? Wow, just wow. Bless
because
your
people
heart.
have a right to live, Solomon. Because people have a right to live. You
Wow,
know,
wow.
why do you deserve free food? Why do people deserve an economic system that allows them to earn enough to purchase food? An economic system that allows them enough. I will simply say this to Solomon. I am ashamed at the fact that I frequently shop at Whole Foods. It's around the corner. They have good stuff.
And thank
However,
God you
one day I
can.
was
Hello.
asking this woman um, to cut a piece of cheese for me, and she said to me, "This cheese costs more a pound than I make an hour.
Wow.
This cheese costs more a pound than I make an hour." Do you deserve free food? No, you deserve healthy food. You don't deserve to have the food that's at the bottom of the barrel. You deserve to earn a wage. If you work every day, you deserve what we call a living wage that allows you to purchase food, Solomon. Just marinate that, please. Just marinate that.
And you know what? It's not even free food. All of our taxes and all the things that we do on this earth pay for everything. I'm not going to begrudge anyone any food. I'm just not going to do it. If you come to me and you're hungry, you got it. Okay? And that's it. I don't want to play that game. You don't know who you're denying food to. That is not your job. What you do is, as Lisa said, we deserve affordable, wait a minute, healthful food, Lisa. Most of us are not even getting that. Much of the food that we manufacture in the United States, they will not allow in other countries. We don't deserve that. But I'm going to tell you, I'm
Santita,
not going to
when
fight
people
you
talk
with that.
about free,
You get the
Santita,
final
when
word.
people talk about free, let's talk about free. Let's talk about free. Let's talk about what corporations get for free.
For
Let's
free.
talk about the ways that, for free. Let's talk about the subsidies that go to these corporations for free. Let's talk about the profits they're earning for free. And then let's talk about the fact that the people who do the work, who are paid inadequately, have to get the ridicule of those who say, "Why do you deserve free food? You earned the food." We could structure our economy so that people are treated fairly. We have chosen not to do so. That's
Absolutely.
a choice we've made to exploit people. And we are unworthy. We keep talking about the great United States of America. What's so great about a country? Like Dr. King said, he said, what did he say? The quote is leaving me now. It's one of my favorite quotes. He said there are 40 million poor people in America, and I want to know how we got 40 million poor people. Then he said, you see, I want to know who made the oil, who earned gets the oil, who gets the iron ore. If the world is 2/3 water, why should we pay water bills? And what he's really saying is we set up an economic structure that rewards those who already have and make it impossible for those who don't have to get.
Mhm.
That's the
Amen.
structure we set up by choice.
That's right. And it is spiritually immature. It is socially unsustainable. Everyone deserves. Everyone has a right to the tree of life. Everyone deserves food, clothing, and shelter. See, I don't see those as privileges. I don't see healthcare as a privilege. I think it's a fundamental human right. I believe that.
Precisely.
You
Precisely.
know, I don't think that people should be. We're reducing people, and one day I hope and pray that you will always, that you will never need, that you will never be in need, because I'm gonna tell you, you keep on living, you can be you can be in need, and then you will see, you will the criticism that you've leveled at someone are something that you always see in your own life, the judgments that you give to people. I don't want that for you, Solomon. I don't want that for anyone, but I do know it just, what goes around does come around. Think about that. Every
Solomon, my suggestion, Solomon, is just spend one day, pretend you're not Solomon. Pretend
yeah,
you are homeless. Take
yeah.
one day, get up in the morning and go out and see how it is. Talk to the people, but not only talk to them, don't bring any money or bring $2 and see what it will take. How can you get lunch?
Oh my
How can you get
gosh.
dinner? What if you need a glass of water? Live a day, one 24 hours, or even one 8 hours in their shoes, with the comfort of knowing you can go back to wherever. But meanwhile, empathize with your fellow citizens. Just
Because
empathize, Solomon.
because
Empathize.
one day it can be you, and if you keep on, it will be on one level or another, or another. You're going to absolutely need. What did my father say? You got to be careful that your wants don't become your needs, because then your needs will become your wants. Be very careful,
Mm.
because our priorities are off. And now people who never ever 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 thought they would feel financially insecure, home insecure, insecure on any level, they're feeling it. I have a lot of friends who live in PG County, Prince George's County, which is the wealthiest black county in the country. You have a lot of two income households where people are making it in excess of six figures per household. They're having to sell those houses. They never thought they'd lose these jobs and be replaced by AI. Just stop. Your fortunes can turn around on a dime. On a dime. Be careful. Keep on living.
Especially in
Keep on.
this country.
And just know, just especially in life, I got my father, who's one of the greatest orators that the country has ever produced. He can barely speak now. You just keep on living. But because he's been so loving and so kind, when people see me with him in public and they say, "Oh my goodness, you're so loving to your father," and "Oh, would you just touch his me?" I'm like, wait a minute. My father has loved me. This is the very least I can do for him. Are you kidding me? Oh no, please put some love out there, my brother. And you said I missed your point, then tomorrow explain it to me, okay? But just please don't do that, because my heart breaks for you, because I don't even want to hear something like that come from you. I really don't. Love you, and I love you, Dr. Julianne Malvo, WPFW, every Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Support her as she supports you. There's no one with more credentials that are more stellar, and yet she has cast her lot with the least of these. I have so much admiration and love for my sister, my Delta sister. Hello, someone said Deltas are not to be messed with. That's right. Ooh, girl.
Oh,
Sending you
don't
so
start
much.
none and there won't be none.
Come on now, that's how Deltas roll.
Thank you, Santita. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And thank you for continuing to keep our people informed and keeping me as part of the posse.
Oh no, well you're part of the family. More than that, you know that. I love you. AM 950 Radio,
Salute.
the voice of progressive Minnesota, the
Love
Santita
you
Jackson
more.
Show. No, impossible.